The chicken manure incident was the best, worst thing that could have happened. It was so sensational and sensationalized. It was so ridiculous and almost comical that it was an opportunity to bring a lot more issues to light.
Be careful not to spend your life waiting to be understood. It will be wasted. The fruit is the last thing on a tree's mind. So don't mistake change for growth, or growth for maturity. The aim is to cultivate character. Alcatraz.
Tell me, Norm, you were here when the chicken manure was dumped. What were you doing when they showed up?
Sleeping.
So
Trying to sleep.
You wake up and what did you see?
Well, I seen a few employees in the city saying you grab your stuff or it's getting tossed. And don't move it down the road because it'll get tossed. And it's like, well, what do you do? Where do you go? What are we supposed to do? Don't know, but you can't stay here.
Did you just stand by and watch as they dumped?
No, I grabbed what I could and helped other people grab what they had. And I just left and just swallowed the pill, right? What can I do?
The park beside Abbotsford's Gladys Street Salvation Army is a popular outdoor camping site for the city's homeless. A few days ago, the city tried to change that by dumping chicken manure where they sleep.
This is absolutely obscene, and quite honestly, it's pretty indicative of the way homeless are treated in Abbotsford. Every way you turn in this town, the most marginalized and the most vulnerable citizens are getting kicked and not given a chance to recover and get back up.
It's been a really crazy past few days just over this chicken shit fiasco.
Tell me what happened here.
Well, Tuesday they dumped a load of chicken manure right here. From there to there, and it went all the way back up here. The City of Abbotsford's bylaw department brought one of their mini dump trucks and just dropped it, shoveled it out.
Why did they do this?
In response to complaints, really. A lot of neighbor complaints around the surrounding area because of the use of the property by our community. They overreacted and did something extremely stupid.
You know what I need, Ward? I need those little biohazard stickers. I'm going to collect my own
what do you got there?
Chicken feathers.
Oh, you're collecting them?
Yeah.
How come you're collecting them?
I don't know, it just seemed like the correct thing to do.
Everybody who was hanging out here, where are they hanging out now?
100 feet down.
Oh, really?
Yeah. If you look down the bushes a bit, you can see some folks loitering around down there. There's all our buddies and friends hanging out down there.
Wow.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's not done anything but cause more problems.
Some people call this situation homeless, but I tell people I'm not homeless because the way I see it, I was born up in the MSA hospital.
What year were you born?
1963.
Okay.
And I ended up being born after my father had died, and I ended up growing up in town here. My mother used my father's life insurance policy to buy a house down the other end of this road. And I'm still living on the same street I grew up on, and I've been the better part of my life on this street. At the current time, I live outdoors. And I say, so I'm in my hometown, living on my home street, and like the song says, our home on native land. I even have native status, so I'm at home.
Hey Jesse, by the way, real quick, we need a sharps container. I see there's a couple needles. There's Jesse. Hey Jesse. So yeah, that's kind of the reason behind all this. It's just a heavily populated area. That's the happy tree. Everyone hangs out here. So it's a drop-in center for our homeless. And the city's response was to dump manure in their drop-in center.
A buddy of mine says, well, whatever, it's bullshit. I said, no, sir, bulls don't have feathers either. They don't eat them. They usually make other things fly. So it's not bulls. It's chicken shit. Plain old chicken shit. I wouldn't even dignify it calling it manure, because manure, to me, denotes something one uses to grow.
Because you guys got the big one there, correct?
Yeah.
Can I have a few packs? I don't have any in the new van. You have a few packs? Oh, yeah. Hey, we're breaking the law here. Technically, mobile's not illegal yet.
I'm not at a station per se.
What are you guys doing?
Huh? Needle exchange stuff.
Okay.
Resupplies, etc., etc.
Do you need,
This is for Dennis.
Ooh, Christmas
oh,
present.
that's a good size.
Yeah, not bad.
We need one of
It's in between the big ones that I've got handing out and the
And
other
this is
ones.
because we have a lack of funding because of bylaws.
yeah.
Then we have to do it off the trunk on the side of a road. Thank you again, City of Abbotsford.
What would the police do if they came by right now?
Nothing. Because technically, it's only a fixed site distribution that's illegal, but it's because of that bylaw, it's inhibiting the cash necessary to do this
Yeah.
with a little bit more class and organization.
Why is it important to do this?
To keep people alive, to save tax dollars, to get people into treatment and recovery. The list is quite extensive.
Yeah. Did you guys grab some? Do you want the cake? No. Are you sure?
Yeah, we don't need cake.
What will it take to make this right in your eyes?
Lots of apologies, a lot of accountability, a lot of transparency, and a real tangible solution to make sure this stuff doesn't happen again. So by making a safe space where everybody can hang out, maybe. First and foremost, to get our city, our marginalized community members treated with more respect. Just a little respect. I mean, they're receiving none. Now, if you had done the same maneuver and dropped a load of chicken shit on somebody's house on Eagle Mountain, we'd have a whole new council by this week, you know, coming up, right? Like, I mean, and it's disappointing, again, it goes back to some of that stuff that we see in this city with the church's response, that they're not even intervening for the lesser, right, in this community. They don't intervene.
Remember that?
Oh, yeah, yeah. What was that?
This is where the money's coming from.
You need only watch the lead into the CTV news coverage of this. The opening sequence was a bunch of steeples with crosses, and then after that was a quote from a local advocate saying this is the most unchristian Christian town I've ever seen, while he was standing on the patch of chicken manure.
I've been known to comment that Abbotsford, for a city that takes incredible pride, or false pride in this case, in claiming to be Christian, this is the most unchristian city I've ever lived in. My background is as a chartered accountant. For years I managed to cope with my mental illness, but the problem with coping and not actually addressing any of the issues is that things just keep getting worse and worse. I say I coped and coped until I couldn't cope anymore, and then I broke, and I ended up on the streets of Abbotsford homeless for several years, living in my Volkswagen. I know how much of a struggle it was to get back into housing, to get the help I needed to get my head together well enough. In a city that prides itself on being super Christian, that shouldn't be an issue. You'll see the community out yelling about the lingerie football league, or about shows that they consider too sexually explicit at the trade acts. And there'll be a ton of them out writing letters and going on about that. But those same people won't be out there saying, we need to have this housing. We need it for not just the homeless, but we need it for the people in this community who can't afford housing. So I'm not very happy with our faith community on the whole, because they love to preach and preach, but they don't like to practice what they preach.
Over the last couple of days, I've been making pointed comments about the lack of intervention from faith-based groups and organizations in our community who saw this atrocities happen and did nothing. And then they tell me I'm the bad guy who lacks wisdom and insight and all this stuff, and I shouldn't be talking about this or saying these statements, but trying to find creative solutions. We're talking basic human rights violations here. Food, water, shelter are being destroyed. And the church membership this week has largely sat by. They see our statements going, guys, let's get motivated as something negative. But that's not what the point is. The point is that these people should not be violated like this. That's the point.
Yeah.
You know, how do we communicate that effectively? I know I lack in that department on effective communication on that, but damn it, this shit shouldn't happen. A pastor shouldn't watch it happen. Somebody should do something about it, for fuck's sakes.
I'm just breaking spiritual bondage over people by waving my flags, just releasing God's spirit to break the oppression over especially the homeless and the down and out and the people that no one wants to see. These are my swords and I'm just slicing the demons in half. Also, it's like in battle times when you wave your flag and ask for the reinforcements to come, that's what I'm doing. Waving my flag, asking for God to bring his reinforcements into this area. Good. Just out here praying for people, needing any prayer whatsoever.
How have people responded to what you're doing out here?
The first day I came out, someone threatened to beat me up for holding the sign, and then I've had people honk and wave and thumbs up, and people honk and give me thumbs down. Just a whole mix of reaction. People coming by and calling me crazy. Other people coming by and saying, what a good job you're doing.
And have you had much interaction with some of the addicts or some of the homeless folks?
I've had 9 people come up and allow me to give them messages or pray for them, and they've received it. And I really haven't seen them since, so I'm guessing that that's because they're no longer on the street, or God's really moved them to a different place that's better for them.
What would you say to people who are somewhat critical of the faith communities? Maybe saying they're not doing enough, or a lot of the work that's being done is kind of enabling.
I would say find out. There is so much more happening than typically gets heard. Everywhere from prison ministries to single moms to the homeless, of course. Reaching out to addicts, there are 3 or 4 recovery houses and recovery support houses that are totally funded by the churches. So a lot of good things are happening, but we need to see if we can find ways to do more.
Yeah, well, it strikes me there's a lot going on both within the faith community, within the city,
Yes.
all sorts of places, and yet we reach a point where a homeless camp gets chicken manure dumped onto it. How do you explain that in the midst of so many organizations that are trying to help?
That incident was an absolute shame. Should never have been done. Nobody in the faith community would tolerate that at all or recommend it at all. I know there was information out there that the Salvation Army was involved. I've talked firsthand, and that's rumor, social media. It was not true at all. That was the action of one foreman in the city. No authority from city manager or the mayor. So it was bad. It was a one-of, a very bad one-of. It doesn't negate all the good things that are being done by the city, the police department, and the faith community.
The chicken manure incident is something that hits the media. It's got great visual images. It sounds important to people, but nobody was actually hurt. And so the chicken manure incident, in the scheme of things, if you were truly understanding what is a serious incident or not, it's a troubling incident, but you need to put it in context. Compared to an incident like where Vancouver took the life of a mentally ill person in a serious street conflict that arose, and it's just a horrible situation. A young man dies and a police officer's life is forever in the balance as to whether they've made a mistake, and so we have this chicken manure story, which actually, in my mind, provides an amazing opportunity for us to move ahead.
It's interesting, there are people that are screaming and yelling right now, and rightfully so, that this was a horrible thing to do, that it shows a lack of compassion, it shows a lack of dignity and a lack of respect. Yet those very same people are screaming, wanting me to put a head on a platter. Who did it? I want this person fired. They should never be entitled to an income ever again. So basically what they want me to do is create one more person that's homeless, in a way. And they don't want me to deal with compassion and respect for the person that made this decision. And what happens is out of frustration, good people make bad decisions. Homelessness is one of those things where nobody wants it in their backyard. There are neighbors that feel terrorized. I have had a woman in here crying. She looks after her granddaughter, and none of her granddaughter's friends are allowed to come over to their place because it has become incredibly frightening to a lot of people.
Tell me about what it's like to live here.
As you could already see, it's kind of a nightmare.
And how do you feel the city or the police, how do you feel about how they're handling the situation?
I don't think they're doing a thing. I watched the police drive by here and they don't say nothing to nobody. They know that people are selling drugs and doing drugs out here. I've even told them.
Do you see drug deals happening back here?
Oh yeah, I used to live right in the corner apartment in the alley here. But they've never done anything about it.
Have you ever thought about moving?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, I want out of here.
What's your rent like here?
The rent's good.
Yeah. It's probably hard to find a place that's got as good a rent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the whole problem, is finding a good place to live. I mean, this would be a good place if they do something around here. We used to have loitering laws, vagrancy laws, and I mean, if the police came by and told us to move, and we were still there an hour later, well, you're going off to jail then. I mean, that's what they should do. Bring in a vagrancy law or loitering or something.
From a policing standpoint, obviously we are only 230 officers, and we are responsible for protecting, from a public safety standpoint, 140,000 people in the city of Abbotsford. And although there are public safety interests in homelessness, there are also sort of immediate safety interests in homelessness.
Just because you're homeless doesn't give you the right to live wherever you want. You can't just camp up in the middle of a railway crossing. You can't use the outdoors as your bathroom. And you can't just continue to use things that are left around in neighborhoods as a source of income. People have a right to enjoy their property that they pay taxes on. And just because you're homeless doesn't mean that you get to do whatever you want and everybody else has to play by rules. The homeless have a responsibility. They have a responsibility to want to do better themselves. I think in some cases, many of them have just given up.
So you guys are camped out here in Grant Park. How long have you been living here?
Just over 2 weeks.
Where were you before?
Here, there, and everywhere, pretty much. Like anywhere that was dry.
How long have you been living outdoors?
Going on 2 months.
Okay. What led to that?
My landlord kicked us out because we were home invaded, and social assistance kicked me off, so I've been trying to get back on.
Okay, so in the meantime, this is your best option.
Yep.
So who all are you living with out here?
My boyfriend Tim and our friend Harvey.
How long have you been living outdoors like this?
About a year now.
About a year?
Yeah, about a year.
Okay.
I lived outside before, but I mean, it was about a year this time, so.
Okay. And how come you're living outside?
Basically, welfare just said you're cut off. You're only supposed to get to welfare for 24 months anyway, and I'd been on welfare 5 or 6 years.
Okay.
And trying for disabilities, but every time I get a disability paper signed up, they turn it down because they say that's not good enough. So basically, the checks just stopped coming, and I couldn't pay any rent. I ended up outside, so somebody gave me a tent, and I said I decided to put it up. For a little while anyway. At least it got me out of the rain. Because once you're outside and you get wet, there's no drying.
Yeah.
You depend on your McDonald's restaurant or whatever to let you stay there for a while when you buy something.
Right.
And that's if you have money, so.
Yeah. So how do you get money at this point?
I usually bottle and can, actually. That's what I do. I'm a dinner right now. That's how I make any money, so.
How much can you make on a typical day?
Well, on a good day, maybe $30, $40 if you're lucky.
Do you have family in town?
I have family in Mission.
And that wasn't available to you at this point?
No, my parents don't like the fact that I'm with the guy that I'm with, and they took my child and away they went.
How old is your child?
She'll be 4 on Canada Day.
So when was the last time you saw her?
2 months ago.
Okay, well that's got to be tough.
Yeah.
So your daughter, you lost her because of your addiction?
I originally lost her because I was in a relationship with a guy who told me when I was in one of my depressed states that if I loved him, I would get rid of her, and told me to go and ditch her in an abandoned street pretty much and just drive away. And I was so manipulated by this guy that I put her in a car, drove her to a street, went to go take her out of the car, realized what the hell I was doing, and called my mom and said, I'm coming over right now and bringing Paige, and that was it.
Wow.
So ever since then, like, I feel horrible for what I was about to do, but I'm so grateful that I didn't do that.
Are you currently using anything, or
Yes.
you are? Yeah. What are you using at this point?
Currently, I am using speed. I was using crack and heroin, and my boyfriend got me off of that.
You don't strike me as somebody who's using.
I'm a drug and alcohol counselor for at-risk youth. I've got diplomas for literally everything. I graduated high school when I was 15.
Wow.
Yeah, and so I'm pretty smart, but this isn't being very smart. But
Did you ever dream when you graduated at 15 that you'd be camping out in Grant Park?
no,
No.
no. I used to own a house.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, so owned vehicles, had everything, and then I let drugs into my life, and
So this is a low barrier drop-in center for women. We see about 30 to 40 different women a day, about 100 to 150 different women a month.
What percentage of the women that you serve are actually, living outdoors?
That's a question we get asked often. If I had to guess how many women are actually homeless and don't have a secure place of their own,
Count the lockers.
Yeah, I would say probably 90%, but that's very difficult to gauge because women are very private about where they're living for very good reasons. They could be ambushed by somebody and their tents all taken down, or they could, a whole bunch of people could come where they got a quiet space and draw a lot of attention, or they could be living at a place where somebody is collecting their welfare. So there's a lot of reasons why women keep that very private.
And define homeless, because I mean you can have women that are living in shacks literally and couch surfing and a lot of times trading sex for shelter. So if you mean actually sleeping on the street, well, I mean I'm sure that would come time to time depending on whether they could find a place to crash for the night.
What would you say are some of the principal causes of the situations that these women find themselves in?
Well, it's easy to go to drugs and mental illness, which is absolutely the case, but you need to step back from that and say, why drugs and why mental illness? Because the vast majority of the women we support have experienced severe trauma in their lifetime, whether it's physical or sexual abuse, whether it's abuse from when they were children, or abuse that they're experiencing now because they're living in poverty and living in pretty dicey situations. More often than not, it's a combination of both. So it's a combination of childhood abuse and current abuse. So these are women that have had huge trauma in their life, and at very minimum post-traumatic stress disorder, if not schizophrenia. We see quite random bipolar.
Why is there so much violence against women?
I think that women that are marginalized are easier targets for predators that want to commit violence against women because they won't be believed. They won't go to the police to access support because maybe they're prostituting, or maybe they have drugs in their pocket, so they won't go to the police. And maybe because she's prostituting, she's farther out in darker, isolated places where there's no lights or people watching, and so violence is much more rampant.
So, who here has heard about the whole chicken manure fiasco?
I wanted to go to the city and kick their butt.
Yeah, sure, go to the city. Eye for an eye. That's interesting, right? We bring it up, and the initial reaction is to fight back against it, right?
Fight fire with fire. Not good.
Who had those feelings when they heard about it somehow? That anger?
We do something real stupid, dump a bunch of
cow shit in front of their door.
Cow
shit.
In their living
Okay,
room.
just wait 1 second. Let's take that course of action. This way.
Sorry, we didn't mean
Okay. So let's think about that course of action and take it to its take it to its logical conclusion, right? What is the city's response? The city's response that absolutely closes the door to any type of productive discussion. It closes the door to restoring relationships.
So why did they do it?
They did it because they made a bad decision, but we're not going to fight a bad decision with a bad decision.
But the truth of the matter is that reaction where we got hostile, and that includes pretty much all of us here, including me and Jesse, where we were both, considering burning down things and, other actions that are unnecessary. We mustn't act on this. Because when we respond to injustice, we do not respond with injustice as well.
The Bible says things like, bless those who curse you, pray for those who persecute you. We got to refuse to hate because we know that love does a better job. And we know that justice, doing the just thing and doing the loving thing are the same thing. So when we produce that knee-jerk hateful reaction in the same way as a knee-jerk hateful thing that was done, we step away from that, we step into love and pursue justice from love, right?
Well, that's the thing. How do we react in this situation, right? And what does God ask for us? One of the first things He asks for us to do is to go to prayer on this, right? To find the wisdom, to find the guidance, to listen to what the Spirit has to say about this situation. And that's what we want to do here today. So what I'd like to do is see if we can get a few volunteers to lead us in this stuff. So I'd like, somebody would like to volunteer to pray for the bylaw department. There's little laws.
Matt volunteers? Matt's volunteering.
Matt's covering bylaws. Okay. Who'd like to pray for mayor?
Now you're pulling strings.
Yeah.
Michelle. And who would like to pray that the churches hear this right now and respond? Who wants to take that one on? Doug gets that one.
I can do that one.
Okay, so we're going to talk to the churches. Me and Jesse have a big, elaborate plan. It's going to cause some ruffles.
Help the mayor be on our side. Right now, we're hard.
The harder you push, the more resistance you encounter. So don't go too long before you realize that to be radical is to be soft and gentle. Hardness will always oppose love. Things go the way things want to go. Even God doesn't usually interrupt, wasting energy like the rest of us. There are many kinds of pushing. Most of the time, pushing and pulling are the same, just as laziness and impatience. These are all temporal things, and therefore secondary and intrusive at best. I do things because I am things.
A letter from the mission field. We write this letter with a broken and tired heart. We live and serve in a place with violent disregard for its poorest and most vulnerable citizens. Rape and beatings are common among our friends. Violence and destruction hunt them daily. Despair and pain are constant companions. Most of the time, the cries for help from the victims fall on deaf ears and hardened hearts. One can only witness so much heartbreak, degradation, and oppression among their neighbors before reaching a breaking point. We are endeavoring to spread the word and to encourage Kingdom citizens to engage with, protect, and defend our neighbors. We hope that this letter promotes not only dinner table discussions, but also active, long-term engagement on the front lines as we strive to see the love, hope, and message of Jesus spread to the least, the last, and the lost.
The soul does not need an event. A walk will do. A destination is not necessary. Plans are good too. But the seemingly random and uninvited moments of the creative process will still interrupt.
How do you think people are going to respond to this? There'll be some people that like it, some people are like, these are morons, and some people just not even notice and tear it down. I think that should be a fair coverage, right?
You wonder if the message is going to get out at all, if anybody's going to think anything about it, or if it's just going to be an obnoxious thing done by those guys who smoke.
Ethan!
The best possible response, when you think about it logistically, right? The people who are going to be seeing this are going to be the first people walking into the churches, right? So largely, the gatekeepers of this information are realistically going to be some of the leadership of the church, who are likely the first to sort of stay there on Sunday morning. But you know, even in that, like interrupting someone's day, allowing them to sort of think about this in that context, walking into church when they're on their way in to sort of a moral headspace. I think our goal is to have sort of an implicit "what say you" at the end of it, right? Mm-hmm. Like what say you? Here are some things now like can we respond? What ended up happening with the letter was maybe 2 or 3 people who was maybe, I guess, meant for have responded. But one of the most interesting things that happened with it was an inspector with the Abbotsford Police Department who attends, I believe it was Northview Church. I've heard that's where it was. But I guess he was walking in and he read the letter and took a picture of it because he found it unsettling, I guess, particularly some of the things that have been said about local authorities.
Homeless advocates are making more disturbing allegations about police action in Abbotsford, BC. They say officers are damaging what little property the city's homeless have in an attempt to drive them out of the city.
The allegation came up at a meeting that took place in Abbotsford last week, and it was brought forward by an advocacy group that does a lot of frontline work that is respected in the community. And for that reason, we have elected to contact the OPCC, ask for civilian oversight, and we have now engaged in an investigation to determine whether these allegations are founded.
That's really interesting, right? The Lord does what he wants, with what he wants, and whom he wants. So I guess that's the way this was all supposed to go.
And we've been trying to do that for years, but now we have this catalyst at the moment, so we're hustling to try to pull together those tables.
And again, the whole investigation is one of the things that would have never happened, or would have likely never happened, had this chicken manure incident not been such a massive fiasco.
So you guys are really right at the center of this.
We had no idea. We didn't intend for this. Like, we've been trying to assure everybody that we work with that our main focus that we're trying to drive home with all this extra coverage is that we got to try to make our friends who are living in the streets and make them the focus, try to give them the attention they deserve to make sure their voice is heard first. Because I'm just an idiot that just happens to keep showing up at the wrong place at the wrong time or something. So we're trying to make sure that we're finding ways to go, no, stop looking at 5 and 2, look at the homeless community and get them to talk for themselves.
You know, we're just homeless people dumping chicken shit. It was no big deal because it was just gonna have to be something you lived with again and have nothing done about it.
Just because I'm homeless doesn't mean I can't have salt and pepper, okay?
I mean, who wants to come home, crawl into a fucking plastic house? You know, I'm a body man painter. He's a ticketed welder, artist, you know, tattoo artist.
I'm a mechanic, certified mechanic, but my hands, I'm dying of bone cancer, so I can't twist wrenches anymore. I have a hard time pushing that cart up these hills half the time.
They think that we want to live like this because we're drug addicts, we get our welfare check, we spend it on drugs, and then we're sitting around. And then we're stealing everything that we get, you know, like a bunch of horse shit.
And then the one cop goes, why do you have a mirror? I have a mirror so I'd be able to comb my hair, you know. Then he asked me a stupid question, asked me why I had a toothbrush and toothpaste. I have a toothbrush and toothpaste because I like to brush my teeth.
This is the first time I've really been hardcore homeless. Like, I always had family to fall back on, like my grandma and my grandpa, but they're passed on now, right? So this is actually the first time I've had to not only sleep, but like, you know, survive.
I have my peanut butter, my jam, and I got my most important thing right here, but you know what a cop did to it? He ripped it in half.
A police officer?
Ripped my Bible in half.
Did he at least break it into Old and New Testaments?
I don't know.
As a kid, did you ever sort of anticipate
No, I didn't.
You'd find yourself living in a situation like this?
No, I didn't. I was anti-drug. Both my parents were drug addicts, right? And I said no, right? There's no way. I'm too smart for that shit, right? And but then it got to the point when I was a teenager, well, I'm too smart to become an addict, so I can fuck around with it a bit, right?
And so the meth right now, how are you going to deal with that?
Eventually, I'm just gonna give up and say enough's enough.
But you're not there yet?
No.
No.
Eventually, everything I end up quitting. So here's to hoping.
Why do you think you're using?
Oh, just stuff from my childhood. Stuff from my adulthood. Feelings of just inferiority. Just all the basic stuff that people feel, right?
Yeah. And just using helps you deal with that?
Well, yeah, I mean, totally. I can go from, just hating life and to like putting a drug in my system and like being okay with Rob, right?
Right.
Oh, when you're an alcoholic, and you wake up and you're shaking, and all you want is just to have your booze and try to desensitize your mind desensitize it from what you see every day.
It's not, I'm gonna go fucking use drugs and turn my life into shit. No, it's my life is already shit. I'm gonna go use drugs to feel better.
I was seriously debating on going on the freeway. Yeah. Kicking a 70. Yeah, it gets that bad, man. You just say, what the fuck's there's no future. What's there to look forward to? I mean, this is like this.
Do you have hope for yourself, Rob?
Yeah, I do. It's like winnowing away, but I know anything is possible, right? Because through the AA program and stuff, I've seen some pretty shisty, shady, like people that have been given up on turn their lives right around. And it's like, oh, if this piece of shit could do it, then, I mean, there's gotta be hope for me, right?
I remember Ward talking to you back the day that you got back and found out about the chicken manure. You had just gotten back from vacation. I asked you, is there a silver lining in this? And you said no. Do you see that any differently now?
Yeah, now I do, definitely, because at the time I was just too angry to focus. And I'm still actually quite pissed, but I've tempered that. But no, yeah, there's definitely a silver lining then. Now I'm starting to see that, definitely.
I'm really optimistic.
But that's not unusual.
That's not unusual either. I feel like with everything that's happening right now, and with all of these things being at the forefront of people's minds, I think if it doesn't cause leadership in churches to be more vocal and reevaluate how a lot of these things are dealt with, I really do honestly think that it's going to cause a lot of people who fill those pews to start to look for some
other
different leadership. Yeah. I don't see how it could go any other way.
What about the mayor and the city and that sort of thing? Do you think there's been any progress on that front?
I'm not overly confident we're going to see anything too quickly. I'm sure we're going to see some change, definitely. But I think just the general arrogance of the city, it's ongoing arrogance that any problem in this town, once they've said their word on it, their final word, then they think it's done. This time it's not going to be the case.
You guys, by getting office space like this, I mean, you're kind of going from a no infrastructure to just having a ghost of infrastructure. Do you ever worry that this is sort of the thin edge of the wedge of you guys becoming, the very sort of institutional organization that you seem to struggle against?
I'm not worried about that because we're never going to fit in. That's the thing. We're never going to fit in. The group that we have, the team that we have, we're the misfits. I think we're going to have, definitely there's going to be an increase in infrastructure. That's just how it goes when you've got to start coordinating things better. But I'm not afraid of becoming one of them because we don't blend in. No matter what we do, I mean, we have to go like shopping for khakis and golf shirts and learn not to say fuck every 2 seconds. I mean, I know I'm not wired that way.
nothing's really changed, but everything's changed. The profile has, but not because we're doing things differently or pursuing, pursuing different things, but rather we're just doing all the things that we have been doing, and the profile of those types of actions has been raised. So that's why
being raised with only people on that platform are us.
In an ideal world, for me, I would say that us two who are living fairly reasonably and all that aren't the people who have to speak about homeless issues, but there are homeless people who feel empowered enough that they can address them themselves and are live and exist in a climate, a political climate that allows them to speak for themselves.
Because, I mean, right now, as it stands, the national view of Abbotsford is it's boring. There's murder, there's drugs, there's disease, and there's a church that's sitting on its ass in the middle of all this and not doing anything largely.
Yeah, and
Right?
you notice like almost every news story has started with, here in Abbotsford, the buckle of the Bible Belt.
Yeah.
People are dying from fentanyl-laced heroin. They're dumping chicken manure on people's camps. There's extreme opposition to a downtown housing unit. The police are being investigated for destroying homeless camps, all in the the religious center of the Fraser Valley. So it's time to change the headline.
I don't need to know. Don't take me nowhere I don't need to go. I got a head like a reindeer. Such a beautiful waste of time. Waste of time. Beautiful waste of time. Waste of time. I went to school, yeah, I learned a lot. Got a degree in what I'm not. You spend your life looking for what you already got. Such a beautiful waste of time. Waste of time. A beautiful waste of time. It's just a waste of time. I'm just a thin, nervous shadow walking backwards down the street. The landing is bitter, but the falling is oh so sweet. It's just a waste of time, a beautiful waste of time. It's just a waste of time. The whole world wants a piece of my head, but they all get a piece of my mind instead. I roll over and go back to bed. It's such a beautiful waste of time. A waste of time. A beautiful waste of time. It's just a waste of time. A beautiful waste of time. It's just a waste of time. A beautiful waste of time. It's just a waste of time.
It was a scarlet night.